So, one of the dangers of being an art history professor, or a professor generally, let's say, is like talking too long. So I'm going to set a timer to make sure I'm not going on too long. But I really want to begin by thanking the colleagues who have come out to participate today and speak. And I especially want to thank an audience. This is amazing to be here on a Saturday afternoon in Binghamton and to see everyone sitting out here. It's really such a pleasure. And then I especially have to thank my colleagues Diane Butler, director of the University Art Museum, and Claire Kovacs, curator, who have been just wonderful collaborators over the last several years with me. I want to, say a few words about the exhibition that provides the rationale for today's convening, Topographies, Changing Conceptions of the American Landscape. And I guess, I tend to think of these kinds of projects a little like I lead a pretty boring life, as a university professor, so, you have to look for excitement where you can find it. So I tend to think of these kinds of projects as like a crime, a well-planned crime. And like any good crime, it's the result of motive plus opportunity. I've watched enough Law and Order over the years to know that much, right? So let's talk. I might talk a little bit about motive and a little bit about opportunity with you. The motive is essentially something like this. It's the recognition that we can no longer tell the history of representing the American landscape in the same way we've gotten used to it over, many, many decades. We can't look at the landscape in the same way in an age of climate crisis and at a time of a deeper reckoning with the nation's history of the violent dispossession of those that it's constructed as its others, let's say, right? Whether that's the continent's First Nations or the enslaved peoples whose labor it conscripted and who helped shape the landscape as we now know it. And, those are not, I think climate crisis and exclusion, let's say, are not separated categories. I think they're integrally intertwined, the one with each other. But together they really mean that we need to find a new narrative, a different narrative for understanding the topography we live in today. So that was, let's say, our motive. The opportunity, as Diane hinted at, was the chance we had to draw upon the rich collection of American art assembled by the Art Bridges Foundation. And indeed, as you'll see, hopefully later this afternoon when you come over to the museum, the core of the exhibition are 5 loans drawn from this really outstanding collection, which allows us to share with the university and the larger local community, the highest quality of American art. Those 5 loans are complemented by works drawn from the collection of the Binghamton University Art Museum, built up over the years, and a handful of works from other generous lenders. So, okay, we've got motive, we've got opportunity. Finally, there are indeed accomplices, which Diane has already thanked. 4 of my Binghamton colleagues, undergraduates, coming from a range of disciplinary specialties, from art history to environmental studies, who co-curated the show. And what I mean by that, that under that technical term is a really set of concrete and difficult things. They helped hone the exhibition's thematic categories. They helped choose the artworks we would display. They wrote the labels, the explanatory labels that you will read. And I really have to say, thank you to all 4 of them. Luke, Clarissa, and Sophia are here today. And I really do want to say thank you so much. The show couldn't have happened without you. Let's say, speaking broadly, the exhibition sets out to contest, to argue with what I think is the founding premise of landscape. I mean, you've all been, whether you've been to a museum and seen, great works of the Hudson School painting or the great Western landscapes of Albert Bierstadt and the like. Maybe you've been out to the Rockwell Museum in Corning and seen them, or you've been to the Met in New York or something like that, or even here at the Binghamton University Art Museum. Whether we're talking about the great paintings of the landscape genre, or maybe you haven't been to the museum and looked at it, but you've seen a great John Ford or Anthony Mann Western lately. The landscape as a genre, as a mode of picturing, as a mode of representing, its founding premise, I think, here in America, has been that landscape is tied to ownership. Right? And by that, I don't necessarily so much mean individual ownership, individual private property, although in the last instance, let's say, that I think is at the root, perhaps. But I'm not talking about so much about individual ownership as a kind of collective national ownership, in which our gaze out over the land is presumed to belong to a white male citizen. That the land is theirs, essentially. It belongs to them, if only in visual form. Like, we can all own the land, even if not economically or socially, but we can participate somehow in this project. I think behind the very real beauty of landscape painting, that assumption lies behind, our view. And the show, I think, both gives you that model, you'll see it on display, but then explores alternatives to it, explores critiques of it, explores other ways of imagining the land. Other strategies, other possible gazes, other views upon it. And indeed, the show is organized in a kind of set of thematic categories that offer, after laying out that dominant model of ownership, offer other possibilities. Offer visions of the ecological cost of the extraction that's tied to that possessive model. Others offers other more personal, intimate visions of the landscape that are tied to the psychological self, to the personal histories of those picturing it. And finally, you'll see examples that imagine the landscape as a kind of body, and the opposite, the body as a kind of landscape, and these are often offered to us by, if I tied the dominant model to a white male citizen, I think you'll find these offered by women artists, by artists coming to this country from outside America, by people of color. And maybe I would just say that at the heart of this alternative, I really think, is the Gasuenta, this two-row wampum that Tony Gagné has generously loaned to the exhibition. It offers us the opportunity to see the landscape as the site of a living treaty between peoples who are compelled to share this land. And I think the convening today, like being here, for me, I'm really running out of time, is a way of continuing and renewing that agreement. It's a kind of, I hope, a recognition that how we talk about and live on the land changes how we make and look at art, and vice versa. The way we might imagine the land in art changes the way that we talk about and live on it. And I just want to say, maybe at the very end, I'm going to turn my stupid thing off because I'm going to manage to get done in 10 minutes or under, as I promised. I would just want to say that, this isn't a conference, right? I think you come to academic things at the university all the time. You come to conferences to hear people talk, and you can take notes or whatever. I think the convening really is something else, right? I think the convening is a set of participants coming together, a set of active people coming together. So the ideal here today is not so much for there to be speakers and an audience, but to imagine a set of tools that we might share together and move forward from, right? In other words, I hope that this is the basis for an ongoing set of collaborations between all of us. And I, again, really want to thank you for giving time to do this. It's incredibly generous on your part. Enjoy the afternoon, and I look forward, of course, to seeing you over at the museum at the end of the day. I hope you can make it over and enjoy the exhibition, and I hope you'll feel free to bug me, poke me, ask me questions, and of course, ask our 3 curators as well, okay? Thank you so much.